Good morning, dear students. Welcome back to the next session of General Science class. How are you all? I hope all are fine. Students, in the previous class, we have started chapter 11, Push and Pull. And we have studied about push, pull, force and things that force can do. And I gave one homework for you. First discuss the answers of homework. So all of you take page number 121. Test your understanding. Unscramble the words and fill in the blanks. First question, dash is a push or a pull? Answer is force. Right here, force. Second question, a force can change the dash of a moving object. Answer is direction. Right here, direction. A force can change the direction of a moving object. Third question, a force can change the dash of an object. Answer is shape. A force can change the shape of an object. Now let's start today's class. Today we will study about types of forces. So all of you take page number 122. Types of forces. There are different types of forces like gravitational force, frictional force, muscular force and magnetic force. Let's study about each of these forces in detail. First one, gravitational force. The earth has a force that attracts or pulls objects towards it. If we throw a ball upwards in the air, it comes down back on the earth because of its gravitational force. If the earth did not have this force, things would have been floating like the astronauts floats in space. So students, what is gravitational force? The earth has a force that attracts or pulls objects towards it. It is called gravitational force. What is gravitational force? The earth has a force that attracts or pulls objects towards it. This force is called gravitational force. When we throw a ball up in the air, it always comes back. This is because of Earth's gravitational force. It means the earth pulls the ball towards it when the ball was in the air. Now, think what will happen if earth has no gravitational force? If earth has no gravitational force, things will float just like astronauts floats in the space. Now let's watch a small video to understand more about gravitational force.
Have you ever wondered why whenever we throw a ball, it always falls down? Have you ever wondered why do we always land on the ground after every jump? It is because of something called gravity. So, what is gravity? Let's watch this video to find out more about gravity. Now, try to stand up and jump for 3 times. Why would you land on the ground instead of floating up? It's because there is an invisible force that pulls you down to earth and keeps you on the ground. That invisible force is called gravity, also known as gravitational force. Now, let's do a short activity. For this activity, you will need a tennis ball. First, try tossing the ball to the ground. Now, try tossing the ball in the air. Then, try tossing the ball to the left. Lastly, try tossing the ball to the right. Did you observe that no matter which direction you throw the ball always falls back down? So, do you know why? It's because gravity is a force that pulls objects towards the earth. So, why is gravity important? Without gravity, we wouldn't be able to stay on Earth's surface and objects would simply float away.
Second type of force is frictional force. Frictional force is the force that tries to slow down or stop the movement of a moving object when the two surfaces are touching each other. Rough surfaces produce more friction. Without friction, things would just be rolling. The grooves on the tires of vehicles produce friction on the road, otherwise the tires would just skid on the roads. So students, what is frictional force? Frictional force is the force that tries to slow down or stop the movement of a moving object when the two surfaces are touching each other. What is frictional force? Frictional force is the force that tries to slow down or stop the movement of a moving object when the two surfaces are touching each other. Children, do you understand it? Let me tell you an example. Suppose a tire is moving over a surface. There is a force that acts between the tire and the surface. This force is frictional force. So in case of the tire, frictional force acts at the point where the tire and the surface touches. This frictional force tries to stop or slow down the moving tire. If the surface is rough, it produces more friction. So, rough surfaces produce more friction. If there is no friction, things will just be rolling or moving. Now, look at these pictures. A girl is rolling a ball on a rough surface and a smooth surface. We can see that the ball moves less distance on the rough surface and more distance on the smooth surface. Do you know why? Yes, it is because rough surfaces produce more friction. More friction means less movement. This is why the ball moved less distance on the rough surface. Now students, have you ever seen a tire? Have you noticed the grooves on the tire? These grooves produce friction on the road. Otherwise, the vehicles will skid on the roads and it will cause accidents. Now, let's watch a small video to understand more about frictional force.
How do things move in real life? Say a ball is moving on a flat ground and there's no external force acting on it. Will the ball eventually come to a halt? Yes, it will. Have you ever wondered why? Say you're skating on an ice rink and your friend is skating on the road. Whose movement do you think will be smoother? Definitely yours. When you hold a bottle in your hand, why doesn't it just slip through and fall? Sometimes when you're walking around in a mall, do you remember seeing a caution sign to warn you about the floor being wet? What explains all this? The answer is friction. The reason why the ball eventually comes to a halt is because of the force of friction. The reason why skating on an ice rink is easier because the force of friction is lesser there. The bottle doesn't slip through because the force of friction between your hand and the bottle doesn't allow it to do so. If the floor is wet, the friction offered by it reduces and there are chances that you might slip and fall. So what is this friction we are talking about? It's quite easy to understand its concept. friction is nothing but a force. It is the force exerted by a surface where an object moves across it. In the first case, when the ball is moving in this direction, the force of friction is acting in the opposite direction. The force of friction offered by the ice rink floor is lesser than the force of friction offered by the road. Hence, skating on the ice rink is easier and seems effortless. The bottle does not slip down because the surface of your hand offers a friction in the upward direction. And in the case of the floor in the mall, the soapy water reduces the friction offered by the floor.
Next type of force is muscular force. When we use our limbs to pull or push objects, we apply muscular force. We apply muscular force when we pluck a fruit from a tree. Pulling a suitcase trolley is also an example of muscular force. So students, what is muscular force? It is the force applied by our muscles. What is muscular force? Muscular force is the force applied by our muscles. When we pull or push something, we apply muscular force. When we pluck fruit from a tree, pull a suitcase trolley or take our school bag with our hands, we are applying muscular force. So, muscular force is the force applied by our muscles. Next type of force is magnetic force. A magnet applies a force on things made of iron and steel and pulls them towards itself. This force of magnets is called magnetic force. The magnet does not pull things made of other substances such as paper, plastic and aluminium. Students, do you know what is magnet? Yes, all of you are familiar with the magnet. So, what is magnetic force? A magnet applies a force on things made of iron and steel and pulls them towards itself. This force of magnets is called magnetic force. What is magnetic force? A magnet applies a force on things made of iron and steel and pulls them towards itself. This force of magnets is called magnetic force. As we know, a magnet can pull things made of iron and steel towards it. But a magnet cannot pull things made of other substances like paper, plastic or aluminium. So students, now we studied about types of force. The types of forces are muscular force, gravitational force, magnetic force and frictional force. What is muscular force? Muscular force is the force that uses the power of muscle. Forces that uses the power of muscles. It is called muscular force. Then what is gravitational force? Gravitational force is the force of earth that pulls everything towards itself. Force of the earth that pulls everything towards itself. It is called gravitational force. Next type of force is magnetic force. What is magnetic force? Magnetic force is the force applied by magnet on iron object. Force applied by magnet on iron objects. It is called magnetic force. Fourth type of force is frictional force. What is frictional force? Force between two surfaces which are in contact. It is called frictional force. Next one, think and answer. Look at the pictures. Two heavy boxes have to be moved by pushing them. Anil is pushing the box kept on a smooth surface. Nirmala is pushing the box kept on a rough surface. Who will find it easier to move the box? Anil or Nirmala? Why? Students, who will find it easier to move the box? Yes, Anil. Do you know why? Because Anil is pushing the box on a smooth surface. We know that smooth surface has less friction. So, it is easy to move on smooth surface. Nirmala is pushing the box on a rough surface. Rough surface has high friction and it is difficult to move the box on rough surface. So, in this chapter we have studied about force. What is force? Force is a push or pull. And different types of forces are muscular force, gravitational force, magnetic force and frictional force. Now, keywords. First one, force. Push or pull. What is force? Push or pull. Second one, gravitational force. The force of earth that pulls objects towards itself. Next one, frictional force. Force that tries to slow down or stop moving object. Muscular force. Force applied by muscles. Next one, magnetic force. Force of magnets. Next, summary. Force is a push or a pull. The earth has a force that attracts or pulls object towards it. If we throw a ball upwards in the air, it comes down back on the earth because of its gravitational force. Frictional force is the force that tries to slow down or stop the movement of a moving object when the two surfaces are touching each other. When we use our limbs to pull or push objects, we apply muscular force. A magnet applies a force on things made of iron and steel and pulls them towards itself. This force of magnets is called magnetic force. So students, now we have completed the theory portion of chapter 11, push and pull. In the next session, we will do the exercises of this chapter. Before that, all of you should read and study this chapter very well. So, see you in the next class. Till then, bye students. Thank you.